Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. There are times when the right song reaches us at just the right moment. Sometimes it's a brand new song. Sometimes it's a classic. Sometimes it's something you've heard 100 times before, but the stars are just aligning, and you hear it with fresh ears. And other times it's like a bolt of lightning out of nowhere. During these recent COVID months, the song Things by Louis Cole has been one of those songs for me that just makes sense. It's not old, but it's not brand new either. It's from a couple years ago, from his 2018 record called Time. I don't know when it was, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, that my friend, the guitarist Lage Lund, told me about Louis Cole. Lage was deep into Louis's second solo album, which was aptly titled Album 2. At that time, the music he made was washy, lo-fi in its way, but emotive, deeply informed by Brian Wilson, and evocative of a kind of West Coast sensibility that reached back into the canyon and below the valleys. In fact, it was his song, Below the Valleys, that first got me. You know, when you hear something that you like so much it makes you kind of angry? Maybe you don't know that feeling, but I know that feeling. And anyway, that's how I felt when I heard Louis Cole for the first time. He was a great writer, a lovely singer, and a pretty killing drummer. And then after that, Louis began to show up in various situations that at first seemed like a logical outgrowth of that first record that I heard, but then started to diverge and diversify. I have to say, he manages to make everything he does feel somehow related, but as I attempt to lay it out for you, I find it to be kind of bewildering and overwhelming. He's essentially a YouTube artist, an internet artist. He came to prominence on the internet, and he's used the tools of the format to his advantage. Video and visual language, visual storytelling have played a very important role in his career. But he's also a totally serious musician. In fact, he's what might be described as a musician's musician. He's definitely someone that other musicians know about and talk about and pay attention to. Around the same time that he was making that record that Lage told me about, he also started making records with the singer Genevieve Artadi, and eventually they branded themselves as a band called Knower, and have made a series of records that are recognizable for a kind of frenetic electro-funk approach, almost celestial or alien in their way, but drawing from a bundle of influences that seem to include Square Pusher and Janet Jackson, as well as a deep well of classic funk and pop music. Pretty quickly, Knower turned into its own thing, and Louis focused on it almost exclusively for the next handful of years. Their most famous song is probably Overtime, which they've actually released twice, once as a studio recording, and later as a live session video performance recorded in Louis's house. His house and those live session videos have become part of the story, in fact. He often films himself, either for his solo projects or with Knower, performing at the top of the stairs in his house. It's a shabby DIY homemade aesthetic, and he's learned to lean into that vibe. But with Knower and with his more recent solo records, he's also honed a more elaborate production style, both in the music and the visual presentation, which, when combined with the provocative nature of the lyrics, can feel a little extreme. For example, some of Knower's other popular songs include The Government Knows.
The government knows when you masturbate. The government knows when you masturbate. The government knows when you feel alone and it's getting late and you're sitting at home looking for...
And Butts, Tits, Money.
Butts and tits and money.
Yes.
Butts and tits and money.
Yes.
Butts and tits and money.
Yes.
'Cause I'm broke and ugly.
Yes.
Somehow along the way, Louis and Genevieve started hanging out with the great LA saxophone player and composer Bob Mintzer, and they even went to Germany with him to do a collaboration with the WDR Big Band in Cologne. That is a rather unlikely pairing, but once again, it kind of made sense when you saw it. Meanwhile, Lewis reemerged in 2018 with the album Time, which, as I think about him today, was the culmination of that 10-year journey. That album also found him in the company of some pretty exceptional collaborators, including jazz piano virtuoso Brad Mehldau and LA bass eminence Thundercat. And Lewis himself has appeared as a guest on projects by Wolfpack. That's him playing drums on their track It Gets Funkier. And Scary Pockets. Here he is playing drums on their recent track entitled Lewis Cole Sucks. And then a couple of years ago, he started making the rounds with a series of big band shows in New York and in Europe. The big band shows let him stretch out as an arranger and orchestrator, and once again, he defies explanation and expectation in just what a sensitive and sophisticated musical thinker he is. You can hear some of those performances on a recently released live album. I remember when he came to New York with the big band the first time. There was a buzz around him. He was using mostly New York musicians, and people were talking about it. I think that was due in no small part to the kind of exoticism of the whole affair. This LA guy who nobody really knows, but everybody kind of knows about, was coming to New York and putting this band together.
Fuck yes.
That's basically how I felt going into this conversation, that he was kind of exotic. I felt like I really understood him artistically. I mean, I have the kind of relationship now with his work that I reserve for a small group of people. If I love what he's doing, I want to listen to it and study it. And even if I don't love it, I still want to listen to it and study it and think about it and consider it. It's a rare artist, especially in the 21st century, who can make a strong enough case that they're worth spending that kind of time and attention on. And Lewis Cole has my attention. Given all of these diverse collaborations and appearances, it's easy to assume that he's a guy who gets around. But in our talk, he reveals himself to be a pretty private, even introverted person. While we delve into his process, his development, his technique, his approach, what really emerges is a portrait of the artist in flux, trying to find some kind of balance between work and life. Third-story.com is the place to go to listen to all of the previous conversations, including recent episodes with Corey Henry and Michael League, as well as previous episodes with all of the Wolfpack crew, Jacob Collier from back in the day, Bob Mintzer, who shows up briefly in a tour diary recorded in Copenhagen some years ago, and a brief chat with Jack Conte of Pamplemousse and Scary Pockets. He appears in my first COVID Chronicles episode from March. Speaking of Jack Conte, not only is he the musical force behind Pamplemousse and Scary Pockets, but he's also the creator of Patreon. And it might sound incredible when I tell you this, but I'm actually on Patreon. You can find that Patreon link at the website also, third-story.com. On the blog post today, I've put up some videos of Lewis as well as a curated Spotify playlist as usual. And if you want to do something nice that doesn't cost a thing, just head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review, then tell all your friends about the podcast. Here's me and Lewis Cole talking it down last week.
How you doing?
We're here. We did it.
Cool.
Hey, man, thanks for doing this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Lewis Cole, man, I don't know if you know this, but I first reached out to you like 3 years ago. I started this process like 3 years ago.
Oh, damn.
I was thinking about it because, you're actually still just as mysterious to me today as you were 3 years ago.
Nice.
So, I usually don't go into this with any kind of super preset agenda.
Yeah.
And I've never launched with this question, but I guess what I would like to ask you before anything else is like, who are you?
Well, right now I'm in my garage trying to write a chord progression. And I got this like soundproof room and I guess that kind of sums up a lot of what I do. I don't know. I'm just trying to answer it in a way that just came to me right now. I don't know who I am. I mean, I guess I don't know. I just whatever you see on the internet, that's pretty much me. I mean, besides like the personal side, which there's I have. I don't know. I think the stuff I put out is a pretty good. It's extreme because it's art, but it's a pretty good representation of who I am. I mean, I really like working on music, and I love the people in my life, and those are the biggest things for me, I think, to make it real basic.
Well, let's start with the chord progression.
Yeah.
How are you approaching it? I mean, I have some thoughts about some of the values and virtues that seem to be informing your harmonic concept. I've been thinking about you.
Nice one.
And one of the things that I feel from you is both a real love of romantic harmony, and especially when I think about your early records, before you kind of pivoted to the full-on electro funk stuff, and also when you maybe weren't so deeply committed to the performative and the performance art aspect of what you're doing.
Right.
There was just like at the beginning, there was just like a real richness and a lushness in the way you approached harmony and melody writing too, and production.
Yeah.
And over time, I feel that has been shifting to a very punctuated, staccato, rhythmic thing, but embedded in that, I'm just going to do some talking now. Embedded in that, I think, is still some of that prettiness. I mean, I think what you have going a lot of times now, I mean, I don't know about this month, but, in the more recent past, is like still some of that beauty, traditionally pretty stuff, but it's just kind of buried in all of that rhythm and all of that punctuated rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what happened with the rhythm shit. It just started coming out more. My main instrument is drums. Even though my favorite thing in the world is writing, I'd say my favorite part of music is writing. But my instrument is drums, so it's that's makes sense that it would come out that way. When you say romantic, do you mean like you don't mean like romantic? Like isn't that like an era of history or something? Do you mean like just like it has a nostalgic feeling or a depth or something? I mean, I'm not going to describe it well, but I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
like it has a romantic feeling too. Like when you're in love with someone, you kind of have similar.
Yeah,
feelings.
or nostalgic. I think is good. Like you did, like that song "Below the Valleys." I think that was probably the first thing I ever heard of yours.
Yeah.
And there's just something about that just feels. I don't know. It just kind of it's lush, and sweet in a way.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I still feel like that part of me hasn't gone away. I mean, I definitely went there on my last album in 2018, even though there is some like, real crunched out funk shit, but like there is still, I believe, that feeling like some of the ballads on my last album, Time. And on the album I'm working on now, it's a lot of that stuff. I mean, I'm actually trying to really channel that right now, that stuff. And it's been really therapeutic for me right now. So I feel like it's still there, even if it goes away sometimes, because I'm doing like some crunchy, like 16th note blowouts with like just, I don't know, the synth chords are so short that you don't even know what's going on. Like that'll be there sometimes, but, I think it depends what mood I'm in. I think right now, like for example, you're asking about the chords I was just writing. I was really trying to go for something that had the feeling, of some kind of nostalgic thing that maybe you didn't even experience. It's like sometimes you get a nostalgic feeling. I almost feel like you have a memory that wasn't yours from listening to a song. It's like, that's one of my favorite things in the world. I get that sometimes when I listen to some of my favorite music, but I'm just trying to, I don't know. That's what I was trying to do right there. So I guess, and I would put that under the category of romantic, like how you used it. Yeah.
What is some of the music that gives you that feeling?
Man, big time Boards of Canada, the early stuff. If you listen to, there's like 3 albums by them that I always go back to. There's one called Random 35 Track Tape. There's one called A Few Old Tunes Volume 1. And there's another one called A Few Old Tunes Volume 2. And they specifically really, they do this to a lot of people. For some reason, with that older stuff, especially, I think, they kind of make you feel like you're revisiting a memory that you didn't even have. People put these like found footage, like thrift store home videos to their music, and I think it kind of helped solidify that vibe, but that is really just in their music. It's an amazing thing. To their music, it's an amazing thing. thrift store vibe. It's home videos. It's an amazing thing.
It's an amazing thing. Thrift store vibe. It's home videos. It's an amazing thing.
It's an amazing thing. That would be the biggest example for me of something that does that, and that I can think of right now. I could probably think of more, but
yeah. That idea of feeling nostalgic for an experience that you've never had, I relate to that listening to your records and your lyrics also. It's not only in the chords, but I mean, one thing that I feel about you is that you're kind of fearless lyrically. You know, you say really honest shit, and sometimes that is a very striking thing in a kind of a pop context, to have somebody saying something that is either confessional or just really feels like you're having a conversation with them. You know, like they're just telling you the truth.
I know what you mean, man. Yeah, well, thank you for saying that too. It's funny, lyrics to me, like, they're so secondary to music when I listen. As a listener. They're so secondary to me. Like, the music hits me so much harder than lyrics. Sometimes I'll go and check out some people's lyrics and it's like, wow, these are amazing, but they still don't give me the same visceral punch that like music does. But when I'm writing, I really put a lot into the lyrics. I try to keep them like how I would say things, or, you know, make it clearly kind of like a parody if that's the vibe that needs to be. But I definitely put a lot of thought and effort into making sure the lyrics are right for me. It's something that I would be happy with, you know.
You know, you said this thing about leaning into a parody lyric, if that's what the vibe is, or saying what you really want to say, whatever that is. And I think that that's one of maybe the enigmatic kind of mysterious elements to you, is that you are just as likely to come out with a lyric that feels absurd and follow it up with something that feels really existential, and they can sort of live in the same universe. And I think that your fans have kind of learned how to balance that and to juggle those impulses in you and accept it. But I think it is a pretty unusual thing to be able to write songs that seem to be wrenched out of your gut and then follow that up with, like, I'm afraid to check my bank account, which I imagine might also be wrenched out of your gut in a certain way. But
yeah.
I don't want to check my bank account. I'm too scared to check my bank account. I don't want to check my bank account. I'm too scared to.
I know what you mean, man. You know what? One thing I think of when you're saying this that comes to mind is sometimes you'll hear a comedian just rattle off like absurd jokes or you know, just jokes, and they're funny, and you're like, it's light, and then he or she will say something serious, and it'll have this extra impact to it where you're like, whoa. It's kind of has this, I don't know, I like the back and forth. I think it's cool. I think it has a power in its own way. If you go from between two different vibes kind of maybe quickly, you know, it kind of has its own power of delivery of the message in its own way, I think.
were you checking out comedy, influenced by comedy, performance art, any of that stuff while you were developing musically also?
I have my whole life. I mean, my family is just so funny, and I've been like lucky enough to hang out with friends who have been really funny too, and that molded me. I think, you know, I'm not even as funny as the people I'm around, but it's like it's helped me to have some kind of comic sense, at least. And now lately, I've been checking out more comedy. A couple guys that I think are funny lately, and I've just kind of been like studying them a little bit, like for the first time ever. Just, it's such an art form, and it's interesting to me. It's cool.
Who are you checking out?
So lately, the two people who have reached me were just like their minds are so fast, and their observations are so incredible, and just the way they think is just like it's amazing. And these two guys, one of them named Tim Dillon, and one of them's named Andrew Schultz. I really think those guys are funny. I'm into their stuff lately.
So I read that your dad is a musician and he was your first influence.
Yeah, big time.
Is he a professional musician?
No, but he would always be practicing piano all the time, like jazz or classical.
And did he get you playing when you were young? Did he play for you? What was the influence? How did it work?
Yeah, I mean, we used to jam together when I was like 10. I would be like playing drums and he'd be playing organ. It was insane, man. It was like, I can't believe how lucky I was to have that. But yeah, I mean, you know, and also him just playing all the time, and playing, not only just playing piano, but he'd also play really cool records around me all the time when I was like from the age of 0 to, you know, still today, he's always playing like really incredible music, like the coolest music, like cooler than like the, you know, like I have some friends who are like, yeah, I listen to cool music, but it's like, dude, it's like the stuff, I just feel like the stuff my dad showed me when I was young, it's just like, it's still, I think, the coolest music.
What do you remember that he played you that you still love?
Oh man, like he was the first guy to show me Tony Williams' Lifetime, and even back then I was like, this is too much for me. But then it became my favorite thing ever. And he would always play like Chopin pieces. He'd just be like shedding Chopin pieces, like the darkest, prettiest piano stuff like I've ever heard. And a lot of Bill Evans. He'd play like Bill Evans stuff, and a lot of Gil Evans too, and Miles Davis, and lots of James Brown, all that kind of stuff, which I still today think is the coolest music. A lot of that stuff.
To lead with Tony Williams and Chopin, I think speaks exactly to where I was starting, which is that you have this kind of rich harmonic palette, and then you have this very aggressive rhythmic thing happening at the same time. And it sounds like that was happening early on, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Just to set the tone a little bit, I'm just taking a shot here, but tell me about when you saw Tron for the first time.
Oh man, yeah. That was big for me. I mean, I don't remember the first time, but I remember seeing it about 20 times when I was a kid, like the 1982 version, obviously. Yeah. Man, I don't know. Something about that. I think it's the first movie to ever use computer animation, but it just looks, the vibe is thick. I mean, it's crazy, man. Even today, it's like, there's like really nothing like it, you know? I don't know, it's just beautiful and changed my whole, I don't know, sense of art or visual art or whatever when I was a kid. And I was Tron for Halloween once when I was like 9. And I mean, still today, I feel like it's influencing all art decisions
that you're making.
Yeah, probably in some way, even if it's tiny.
I think it's really interesting going back, because I went back and looked at some of the earlier stuff, let's say circa 2010, and then the recent stuff. And you're not the only one that has had this happen to them, but it's always interesting to see the way the aesthetic evolves. And yours has become more DIY, more sort of 8-bit, more kind of crushed and weird. You know, you started out kind of playing by the normal rules and then slowly throwing rules away to the point where it's a whole new creative visual sonic language that you're dealing with.
Yeah, man, that's interesting that you notice that. Yeah, I think we started out doing more, like me and Genevieve especially, what we were doing a lot of videos back then in like 2010 with Nowhere, and we were doing a lot of animation and visuals and fancy stuff like that as part of the music videos. We were going for the music video vibe more, but now it's kind of like a lot of the stuff is just like, here's me playing an instrument filmed on an iPhone. And, you know, and it's sometimes like if you watch like the Nowhere live session videos where we're playing in a house in a hallway, it's like we'll add little stupid animations to the video that are just like so low budget and DIY that it's like almost appalling, but it's like it works. But yeah, I don't know why. I think we just naturally went that direction. I think I was watching a lot of YouTubePoops. Have you ever heard of that? YouTubePoops? It's like a genre of video.
No. Tell me.
Okay. There's a genre of video called YouTubePoops, also called YTP. And basically people take existing footage, like for example, I don't know, the Harry Potter movie or something, and then they'll just edit it like in a real lo-fi way, but it's just, they'll make people say things they didn't say, like they'll cut words together. So it's just, you know, it's absurd and really DIY, but it's one of my favorite forms of comedy, I think, because it's just so unexpected and fast paced and stupid. That I think that really just became I eventually watched enough of them where it just was too much inside me to not be an influence. And then I started doing this funny DIY, really stupid edits on the videos.
Tell me.
Basically, people take poops.
No.
Harry Potter poops.
You're not the only one.
It was too much inside me to not really poop.
That you're making.
It's like almost appalling, but it's like, it works.
What gives you that feeling?
It's like fast paced poops.
So let's talk about writing when you're ugly.
When you're sexy, people wanna talk to you. When you're ugly, no one wants to talk to you. When you're ugly, there is something you can do. Go like the world can be real cool.
What were you thinking about when you wrote that song?
That's one of the lyrics where it's like I wouldn't talk like that in a normal conversation. I mean, maybe I would. I mean, as to be funny, but like that's not like a normal thought. That's like obviously a, what do you call it? Not parody, but exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. Exaggerated kind of vibe. So it's like I wouldn't be like, when you're ugly, nobody wants to talk to you. That's not true. It's not factual. It's just kind of like an exaggerated thing. I just kind of like felt like there was no like anthemic, fucking grooving anthemic pop song that like was representing that feeling. Because a lot of people have that feeling. I mean, just from the conversations I've had and hearing people talk about life, it's just like that is a kind of a point of stress or sadness or anxiety for people, I think. And it's just kind of, I just felt like it needed to be said.
I mean, it's interesting that you say I would never talk like that, because, you know, that actually becomes a sort of another theme that runs through some of your songs, along with the weird part of the night and the thing about money and some other stuff too. But one of them is, you know, I just want to fuck it up.
Doctors asking me what's up. I put brother, I fuck it up. Easy, safe, and with us. I put brother, I fuck it up.
And, you know, and the answer to being ugly is, you know, fuck the world. Like,
Right.
That is a kind of another little thematic subset that's running through your lyrics, is this kind of like, well, fuck it approach to living life.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously I'm not trying to like mess up everything in my life, you know, so it's like, even that's an exaggerated thing too, but sometimes it's like, there's just so much giving into fear. And that's been a problem of mine. I'm still running into that now, just giving into fears and anxieties of mine. So probably when I was writing that, I'm just thinking now, I don't remember exactly what was going through my head. I mean, a lot of it is truthful, you know, but it's obviously exaggerated too. And, you know, maybe it was kind of like a reminder to myself to not give into my fears too much. You know, I don't know, it could be, you know, but it is coming from a genuine place. Even still, it's like the message behind it, whether it's said in an intense, exaggerated way or not, is still something I believe in.
Do you get the feeling sometimes that by being surreal or being exaggerated or being kind of absurd, that you're able to cloak some of those insecurities in the performance art aspect of what you're doing, if that makes any sense, that you're protected by it?
Yeah, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
If you come out just straight, earnest, innocent guy with the guitar or the piano and sing about insecurities of being ugly or whatever it is, it's like, it's going to come across one way. But when it's kind of also embedded in this totally absurd thing, I mean, the end of the video, you get mowed down, you know, and you're also in this like
Right.
crazy outfit. And like, there's all these other aspects that are happening. So, you know, there's a truth and vulnerability in it, but there's also performance art and surrealism in it, and in a way you know, maybe you're less exposed, you know, you're less vulnerable if you're able to say something vulnerable in the package of surrealism.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. It's funny, I don't know if I've actually consciously thought of that and analyzed it in my mind, but I think I've just felt that, probably something like that. It's just the delivery of I think this is what it is. I think the delivery of a message like that, it just has more power and weight when there's something, and when it's not just too direct and dry. It just, over a song, it just sometimes doesn't work great, depending on what the message is. But a lot of times I don't think it works great like that for me. I kind of like it to be delivered in like a different way. So I guess that would explain the me hitting myself with my own Buick and, you know, wearing weird stuff and having a whole marching band and people have like dick masks and stuff. You know, I just felt like that was just the right way to deliver that message. And maybe saying it real dry with a guitar wouldn't really work as well, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about your early years, I guess, as a jazz drummer. I mean, when you went to USC, right?
Yeah.
And did you go essentially to be a drummer? Did you get a drum performance degree, or what did you study there?
Yeah, jazz drums.
And at that time, were you thinking that's what you were going to do? I'm going to be a drummer.
I had no idea, man. I think something happened in my mind when I, like, second or third, I think halfway through my 4 years there. And I don't know, because I going in, I was like, they gave me some money to go there to play drums, so I'll do that. And I know I like playing drum. But then once I was there, I was like, damn, like music is my life. And especially writing. I started messing around on GarageBand with a MIDI keyboard, which I guess is basically still what I do. But that's when it started to become like, okay, this is my obsession. And then I started like really getting serious about music halfway through, and then I was like, yes, I need to do something with music. I don't know what it'll be. I don't really know if I want to be a touring drummer. I don't know if I have that in me, but I knew I wanted to do something with music. It was not until after, it was like maybe a year after I'd been done with that. I talked to this YouTube legend named Jack Conte, and he's been a huge inspiration for me. But the biggest blast of inspiration I got from him was this gigantic pep talk where I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I mean, I have to make money, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I should compose for films or be a drummer or whatever. He's like, man, just because he had heard some of my music, he's like, man, keep writing music and put it up on YouTube and make it as a solo artist. And I never thought that I could, that was for me. I never thought I deserved that. I never thought, like, I was always like, oh, that's for other people who like are just going to be successful. You know, I just didn't think of it as like, oh, I could do that, you know, but then when he just like was looking right through my soul and he was like, you have to do that. Everything changed then. I think it was like 2009 or something, or 10. And from that point on, that's been my life.
So Jack Conte gave you permission to do this.
I guess the word permission would work here because I felt like I just was like, nah, I can't make it like that. But then he was like, yes, you can, you know, yeah, and you will. and you know, it took a while for it to actually start happening and for me to move out of my parents' house and make enough money. But that was my obsession and my life, and it still is now. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up Jack Conte, and I think, you know, that story is helpful in providing some context for the early videos that you made with Genevieve and Knower, because in fact, when you first started out making videos as Knower, you were doing higher production value videos, like we were talking about, and doing cover songs rather than original songs, much in the same way that Jack Conte's band Pomplamoose has done. In fact, there's at least one video that I can think of where you joined up with Jack Conte and Natalie Dawn of Pomplamoose and did a video together, Knower and Pomplamoose mashup.
The time's upon you. Take your number, find your place. You are here to race.
Look all around you. Everybody's on the run. Can you keep the pace?
Can't fight it. It's just like it goes on and on. It goes on. It goes forward. Never slows down. On and on.
So I can see that when you started, you were following a little bit in their lead, and knowing now that Jack Conte was one of your early influences and cheerleaders helps to explain how that happened.
Exactly. Like if you watch the Knower video from like February 2010, where we're like covering a Britney Spears
Yes.
song, it's basically, it's the same kind of video that like Jack Conte or Pomplamoose would do. Basically, you know, you just filming the parts and then just putting it together one shot at a time, basically, or I guess layered shots sometimes. But yeah, I mean, that was the blueprint because he was like, do this, try it, you know, go for
Yeah.
it. So it was like, yeah, we started there, just like copying that blueprint. And then eventually, yeah, I don't know, the videos got weird real fast. Like they got like artistic and computer. We started doing computer animation. We started doing like hand drawn animation but we were just incorporating like the Tron stuff, like we were talking about before, just like movies or whatever visual art we had seen that we thought was cool. And we were just like, let's try to combine it with whatever we're doing, you know, and it was still DIY. We still had like $0 to do anything. You know, we just had whatever camcorder that I had from 10 years ago and whatever else we could get. And I don't know, we just naturally were like, let's try stuff. And I think we kind of had a talk one time, me and Genevieve, because for Knower, we were at the beginning, we were just talking like, this has to be intense. This project can't be some like floppy milquetoast, like nothingness, flaccid project. This has to be intense. If it's like a ballad, it has to be intensely beautiful. And if it's like an intense song, it's gotta be like fast and loud and crazy. I think that the fact that that was the mentality behind the music, the videos, you know, were like, well, let's experiment and try to, you know, take this normal looking kind of YouTube style video and maybe add something else to it to bring it up to the level of the intensity of the music. So I think we just started experimenting with stuff like that.
How do you distinguish between something for Knower and something for you personally, especially when Genevieve sings on your records and you'll take a lot of the same stuff that, you know, the same kind of approaches across both projects? Where do you draw the line?
That's a good question, and I don't even have a good answer. I mean, sometimes it's just like I know that it's time to work on a Knower album, so it's like I'll just start writing for that. There's so much crossover, like you were saying, between the different projects. It's, I don't know. Sometimes it's just like, this is going to be for Knower. I would say one thing is that Genevieve's way better at singing than I am, so if something just needs really great singing, then Genevieve will do it for Knower. But so that's one thing. I don't know. Besides that, I guess it's just a gut feeling, you know? It's like, oh, this song just sounds like I should sing it and whatever, you know? So there's not really like a clear answer than that.
You say she's a much better singer than you, and I trust you on that. But, you know, you also have, you know, you first, early on, you had this very layered approach to putting especially background vocals together that is very, to me, reminiscent of Brian Wilson kind of Beach Boys approach. And I think it's really lovely. I don't know if Brian was an influence on you. I can't help but think he must have been.
Huge. Yeah. Massive. But the biggest influence on my stacked vocal stuff? Morton Lordson, his writing. Just like, I can just hear these like open sounding chords in there. And I remember hearing like one of his pieces, maybe it was Lux Eterna. And I was just thinking, like, I can do that. You know, it's just like, so it just made me think that I could do that. I could stack it. It's like slow moving and but it works and it's just so beautiful. And I was just like, man, I can do that. Yeah, that's what kind of made me start stacking vocals like that.
One thing that's really interesting about the world that you tend to live in is it's kind of filled with recovering jazz musicians, jazz adjacent musicians, people who kind of understand the language and understand that underneath everything that you're doing, underlying all of the choices that you make, is a kind of a jazz mentality. Do you see your work that way? Do you see what you're doing as a kind of an extension of your jazz background?
Yes, I think 100%. I mean, it's when people say like, what kind of music is it? I'm like, it's pop, you know, whatever, just pop. It's a song. It's got a melody, singing, you know, there's a groove, whatever. What do you want from me? But I think it's jazz too, man. It's really jazz. I mean, even if it's not like, let's go just like improv all over this, you know, there are solos on the music sometimes. I think that's a big part of jazz, is the improvisation. But you know, also, man, like jazz started as dance music, I think. So that makes sense. You know, like if you listen to like early stuff, you listen to Buddy Rich laying down a swing beat, it's just like freight train funk dance city to me. So, I mean, I don't know. You could say there's parallels like that, but I just feel like there's a spirit in jazz where it's just wild. You're not too fearful, and there's room for improvisation. There's room for experimenting, and it's not too much about other crap. It's more about just the music, I guess. I would say those kind of factors just contribute to a feeling, overall feeling of a spirit of jazz music. I would say that I think I hope is in my music. I mean, a lot of my favorite music of all time is jazz stuff.
I did an interview a couple of years ago with your friend Nate Wood, and I asked him, how come so few people are swinging? Where did the swing beat go? You know? And he said, that may be in itself a provocative question, but his answer I thought was really interesting, and it's related to what you just said. He said,
swing was dance music, and I think nobody knows that. And like, I've been on gigs before where I'm playing with a big band, and we're playing swing, something like a shuffle or something, and people dance, and it's like, this was dance music. Like, this was popular music.
Yes.
And the reason that I feel like the feel is dying is because there's no connection to popular music anymore. And the reason that, if you call this new drumming that I'm doing, it's because it's rooted in popular music, you know,
of
today. Yeah, like electronic music is a universal language, and, you know, rock and everything, all that stuff is something that people can relate to. So when they hear that plus fresh improvisation, it's like, oh, this is exciting.
I see.
But if it's a swing groove, it's like a swing feel. It's music from another generation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like for me, like my swing beat of today would be like a fast techno beat, you know, like, you know, something like that. I don't know. That to me is like, has a similar spirit and drive and feeling to it, but it's kind of like, got a more modern vibe to it. By the way, Nate Wood is like the greatest drummer in the world, and anyone who's listening to this should not even listen to me play drums if you can listen to him, because he's like one of the biggest influences on me ever.
Let's talk about it.
For drums and for music. Like he was the first guy to make me realize that I could sing, because like he's a drummer, but he's like singing and he's like playing all the instruments. I was like, I want to do that. So I mean, he's like been massively huge for me, and I think he's just like probably the greatest drum performances I've ever seen in real life have been from him. Everything is just like really grooving, and it's also beautiful. It's like every idea is a melody. He's the best to me. I think he's the best.
He's a little older than you, right? He's probably a generation of musicians older than you.
I think so, yeah.
Did you see him in LA? Were you seeing him in LA when you were coming up? How did you find him?
Oh, yeah. Man, I was like this. It's like this young guy. I was too young to get into clubs some of the times, but I would try to go see him every time I could. And he's so nice, man. He's such a good guy too. Like it got to the point where I had been on the side of so many stages, like looking at him, that he knew who I was. And one time I went to go see him at like a small restaurant gig, and he came up to me. He's like, "Are you a drummer?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I don't know. And then I just like, we kind of talked that night. And then I think the next time I saw him, I just burnt him a CD of like music that I had written that was like it had been on my music MySpace. Anyway, but then he messaged me. He left a comment on my MySpace that was like, "Hey, great music." And I think I like exploded right there, because I was like, he's a massive hero to me. He still is. But back then, especially when I wasn't, I didn't really know him at all. It kind of just like blew me open. And then we just kind of stayed in touch after that. Now we like play music together, man. It's crazy.
Well, right. And when you put your big band projects together, certainly in the videos, it's, we've seen these videos with both Nate playing drums on your tunes and Ben Wendell in the saxophone section, and these guys that I think were probably a big deal to you. And here they are in your band, in a band that has your name in the front of it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool for me, man. It's nice.
A couple of years ago, you came to New York and did, you've done a couple of big band gigs here.
Yeah.
My memory of that is that there was a network of mostly jazz musicians in New York that were just vibrating about your big band project. It seemed like it was really something that people were talking about and thinking about. And, I thought one of the things that was so interesting about it is that you really have put in very little time in New York. And here comes this LA guy who's like coming from a completely kind of different planet in a lot of ways and making waves in New York. What did that mean to you? What did it feel like for you to come to New York and put a New York band together to play your tunes?
Well, I got to say that was all Dave Binney, my friend Dave Binney, who's like a legendary musician and saxophone player. He was just like, "Let me put together a band."
Did he contract it? He put that together for you?
Oh yeah, yeah. He just put it all together. I mean, we both were like, "It would be cool to have Nate," And I'll I think every time I did it, I had my own friends playing bass and keyboard, like Jacob Mann and Sam Wilkes. And one time we had this guy Petter 9000 play bass. But all the horns and all that was Dave Binney. He was just like got together his friends who were really insanely good at playing too. So yeah, that was all him. I mean, I was honored to be on the same stage as all those people. That was crazy for me, and it was cool because they're all just legends in their own way. All the players. Do
you see yourself as part of that world? I mean, do you get called to play gigs on drums? Do you play just kind of jazz gigs in LA?
Yeah. Well, sometimes. It's been a while since I've done that, but yeah, I mean, if there's not like too much preparation work or anything like that, and I'm free or whatever, or project's not like destroying me, then yes, I love doing that stuff. I'll just like go and play in my friend's band for a night or so. Like a lot of times it's with Dave Binney. I end up playing with him a lot. I mean, a lot as far as the number of gigs I have, which is, I don't know, 2 a month, 3 a month.
Hey man, 2 a month is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I've also seen that you've been, even after school, that you've kind of maintained some contact with Bob Mintzer, who I assume you studied with at USC. What's that relationship like?
We barely overlapped when I was there. I mean, I saw him in the hallway a few times. He'd be like, "Hey man."
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Hi." That was really about it. And then it wasn't until after I left and then I had put some music out that he was like, "Oh, I like this music. We should do something. And that was it.
I live in Brooklyn. I have this fascination with what's coming out of LA right now. I mean, it seems like, maybe it's played out even to have this conversation, but like, it seems so fertile right now. And there seems to be so much crossover between different scenes. I mean, I understand that you're friends with Jack Conte, so it's not so surprising to see you in the new Scary Pockets video playing with Larry Goldings and that whole crew. But it just seems like it's very alive right now. Can you talk to me about what LA is like, and how has LA been kind of like helpful in your development? What is LA like, for you?
I'm probably not the best guy to answer that, but I can tell you my personal thing, because I don't really leave my house that much at all when no matter what kind of virus or non-virus is happening. I just don't really do it that much. So I don't feel like I'm like the number one connected guy in the scene. However, though, I have a lot of friends who are just incredible musicians and write incredible music, and they're all in LA. And that is huge for me, because it's like, if I ever need to put together a band of people, or if I just want to have like a deep musical hang or inspiration hang with someone or something like that, it's like, it's right there. And those are my friends, and they live in LA, and it's like, yeah. So it's for that's really where it's been big for me, the LA scene. But I'm not like going out and seeing stuff all the time and like doing this and collaborating and all that. It's more just like, my friends are really good at music and they live here.
Are you living in a house with a bunch of other musicians? Is there like a communal kind of vibe going on in the way you're living?
Yes, I live with 3 musicians.
Are they the musicians that you work with?
I have, yeah. We've done gigs together. Like a few years ago, we did like just little gigs together, just for fun. And yeah, I mean, we all work together a little bit. We keep separate too, for most of the time. But it's like, if we ever need something from each other, we'll do that.
And you really like working at home. It seems like you really like recording at home. I don't think I've ever seen any footage of you in another studio doing your own projects. It seems like it's always like real homemade.
Yeah, studios kind of freak me out. I don't know why. I like having like a lot of natural light come through the window, and or like I'm in the garage right now. There's no natural light, but I like that too. It's just like, I'm just in my house, and this fluorescent glow is kind of inspiring for some weird reason. I think it's mostly that I'm just like in my comfort zone, and it's just like I'm just here snacking and working on a song at the same time or whatever.
But you do like that one spot at the top of the stairs. I don't know if you like the drum sound there, or you like it visually, or what's going on. What is it about the top of the stairs?
Yeah, I think the drums do sound pretty good there. It's also just good for videos. I think it's just like, you're just in the shot and you can see other things too. But I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. It's just it looks good.
But it's funny, as you say, you like seeing the edges of the shot. You like breaking the fourth wall. You like basically saying like, we know we're in a house. We want you to know that we know that we're in a house.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's just so that is what's happening, and it's just like, you just go with it as opposed to trying to fight it.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. It feels more correct to me.
Do you stay up all night long?
Yeah, I used to. I used to go to bed at like 7 a.m. every night and wake up at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. But lately, like this last month, I've been going to bed at like 1. I've been kind of like a normal person. It's kind of strange, but I'm just in it right now.
Is the weird part of the night the time when you have your ideas? Is it 4 a.m, between 3 and 6? That's the time?
Oh, a lot of times.
Between 3 and 6, when my big ideas hit. Green, freeways driving fast and fast. It's hard to be fake with nobody else awake. I can't live how I live, baby, hanging hard, working hard. Not midnight, not sunrise. In a weird part of the night, yeah. That's the time I feel alright, yeah. All the bullshit goes away, oh yeah. And then it comes back in the day, yeah.
I would get a lot of ideas between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. I don't know, just because the mind is kind of different at the end of the night. You kind of like are in touch with certain feelings that maybe you put away before, and I don't know why that is, but I think I'm not the only one to feel that way. And also, there's just fewer distractions. You're not getting as many buzzes on your phone. And I think maybe there's probably other things too, but I think those are, and just the world is just quieter. I think you feel it. I think you, whether you're, consciously aware of it, I think you feel the energy of the world in you. And I think, like the world around you. And since everyone else is kind of shut off, it just gives you this special feeling that you can't really get any other time, I don't think.
Do you drive at night? Do you take drives at night?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I say, oh, yeah, like I do it all the time. It's like, no, I don't do it all the time, but that's something I like doing. I like taking drives at night. Like, it's very therapeutic and deep for me.
Would I care if I reach my dreams before my time to leave? Would that even be as cool as dreaming about you? And when it comes that time,
I mean, obviously, I'm asking you these questions because these are themes that have kind of emerged in some of your songs, and they feel, like I was saying earlier, very kind of confessional and very honest.
Yeah.
Are you generally preoccupied or concerned with money?
You talking about the bank account song?
Yeah, the bank account song, and also that song "Money," that super fast bass song.
money makes you rich, I guess. Money, turn the no into a yes. Money, won't turn me into a bitch. Money, needing a bitch just to this.
There's another theme that kind of shows up, which is like a willingness to talk about money and a kind of fascination and a curiosity about having money and not having money.
Right. Yeah. So like the bank account song, that was very real back then. I wasn't really making it yet. And so it was like, I definitely didn't want to like go log on to my bank site and check it out. It wasn't good. That wasn't a good feeling, but, it's funny. I put that song out and then immediately my career kind of like took off a little bit.
Yeah.
It was like the start of 3 videos that kind of helped me get to a point where I was like doing okay. But that was kind of funny to me. But then the other song, the slap bass song called Money, that's more about, I just want to make, that's kind of like a statement to myself and to the world. Like, I don't ever want to be obsessed with money. I need to really make it clear to myself that I want to make enough money to do this, like to keep creating music without having to worry. And that's it. I don't want to be thinking about stuff beyond that. I just wanted that to be the focus. So it's kind of like, I don't want to sell out, but it's kind of more like I just want enough money so I can just keep creating music because that's my purpose here.
Do you think you're ambitious?
Yeah. Yeah, next question. I mean, I think I do. I think I am. Maybe some people would be like, well, what's the definition of ambitious? I don't know. I just feel like I am. I'm working a lot and aiming high.
What do you work on and how do you organize it? Do you divide your time evenly? Do you set goals or schedules for yourself? Or do you dive in headfirst into a project and just kind of immerse yourself in it?
I would say to keep myself going, to keep the battery charged in there, I think it's good to have an sight of the end product or project. Either one works there. But like if it's a project, it's like, okay, I know I want this album and I want the concept to be like, it's all a bunch of musicians. We'll have strings on it. We'll have a live band and we'll do it. Like, and then there'll be a lot of fast songs. There'll be a couple of power ballads or something, it's like, I'll have that in mind as the overall picture. And then I'll start thinking about individual songs. Like I definitely want a song that's a power ballad and the chords are like sad, but also happy at the same time. And then I want the lyrics to be about something that I did this and that. And then, it's like, I'll go into details of it and think about like the future. And it's like, I'll kind of try to envision the end and I'll try to my best to like, Nikola Tesla it, even though I'm probably not on his level, but he would like envision his inventions in his mind and then make them and they'd be perfect. So I try to do that the best that I can. I try to envision the end sound and the actual song and what it would be like.
Are you actively practicing drums and practicing your instruments?
Yeah, I just practiced today. Been doing like 45 minutes 2 out of 3 days.
What do you work on?
My time. That's it. I it's like people are like, oh, your time is perfect. It's so good. It's like, yeah, certain beats. It's like some beats you won't really hear me play sometimes because it's not. I need to work on that. I want to get my time like really in control, like so I just can put the beat wherever I want at all tempos and all beats.
Yeah, what's the tempo? What's your nemesis tempo?
100. 100's so hard, man. 100, I just like I'm always rushing and dragging. It's just like little things, and I don't want that anymore. I want to fix that.
I got you, man. I have to ask you this other question, and I'd like you to answer honestly, if you can. Have you, during COVID, have you been dressing up like a kind of freaky clown, driving around in a van, playing music and kind of screaming? Is that something that you have been doing? Because there have been some videos circulating by a project called Clowncore. It's a drummer and a saxophone player, both also playing some synthesizer on the side and dressed in pretty uncomfortable looking clown masks. And there is something about it that feels like it could be you.
I would never do something like that. I'm serious about the art, man. I would never do.
You would never dress up like a clown and drive around town playing drums and keyboard, much in the way that Nate would do, play drums and keyboard at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds like something Nate would do. Yeah, I'm too. I don't see myself doing that.
Have you heard about this Clowncore project that has kind of come onto the scene in the last couple of months?
I've never heard of that.
Haven't even heard of it?
No. I don't know what that is.
What have you been working on?
Right now, I'm trying to finish my solo album, trying to write some nice chords and write some nice melodies as therapy for myself right now.
How did COVID reframe your year?
It was sad overall. I really feel like I was feeling the energy of the world, and I kind of felt like, I don't know, it kind of felt like music was received differently. You know, I don't want to say too much of what my opinion is, you know, on a podcast maybe, but like it definitely, I just felt like it was different, the way that music was wanted and maybe even received in the world, you know, new music or whatever, or old music, I don't know. But just the way the role that music had was just different. And that kind of threw me off. It threw a lot of people off. I think it's making people have like big dips in inspiration. I know a lot of musicians who aren't really, they don't feel the spirit to work on something, you know. I was still working on stuff. I was still writing a lot. And I was very lucky that I didn't personally really feel a huge dip. I mean, I did, I guess, some kind of dip in inspiration, but I was still able to keep going through it, and I was still able to work on music. And so it didn't really mess with me too much. I consider myself lucky through that, and I was able to keep going with my career and stuff. But I also, at the same time, did feel kind of like just a different vibe in the world with how music was perceived.
I mean, I understand you say you don't want to weigh in too much about these opinions on a podcast, but I guess I'm not sure that I know what you mean. Are you talking about the way music was kind of valued by the rest of society, or are you talking about, what do you mean?
Because I don't want to say something that maybe is just so stupid and wrong and I haven't thought of enough. I'll say, like, this is just a feeling that I had, is that I just feel like a lot of new music was just kind of like, you know, somebody would put out something and then it would just be like, okay. You know, it's like, wasn't as much excitement in the reception of it. That's what I noticed. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I noticed. And that was just one thing. I mean, and then also on top of that, just the dip in actual inspiration of a lot of creative musicians, I think, you know, kind of led to some stuff too.
So hard, man. You know, when you said this thing earlier about how, when I asked you about LA and you said, well, I'm not the right person to ask because I don't leave my house, pandemic or no pandemic, I'm at home.
Yeah.
But the one place that you do go all the time is into the internet. I mean, your music is constantly crossing all borders because you're known on the internet. You make videos. Your career kind of happened in that way. So for you to release stuff on the internet is, you know, a little different than artists who maybe would have been spending more time touring or more time focusing their efforts in a different direction, like you're already kind of prepared.
Of course. Yeah, and that's why I consider myself very lucky through a situation like this, because it's like that's where I've already put the work, is just like through the internet. I feel like the live shows for me are secondary. It's like my main goal is to create new music and create something beautiful that I can release and put out, and that's like a digital thing, like through the internet or whatever. And then going out and playing live, that's just like secondary. That's like, let's take the music that we already made and put out and then like do it live as step 2 of the process, kind of thing for me.
Do you think that the doing music on the internet affects the way you think about what you're going to do next or how you're going to do it? Like, you're not afraid to put out like a minute-long song, or something like that, where it's like, if you were thinking more traditionally, you maybe wouldn't be doing that. Like, do you think that being an internet artist in some way changes the way you approach your work sometimes?
You mean like the internet is geared towards like being able to release something like that that's not a traditional length of a song kind of thing?
Totally.
That's a good question. I don't know if I've thought about that too much, because that's all I've ever known is being a DIY internet guy. I have a short attention span, so I think that's why I was doing a lot of short things like that, because it's like that's what I would want to hear a lot of times. Although a lot of my songs end up being long too, like 5 minutes or whatever. But yeah, I think that was the main reason I did it. I'm not sure. One thing I definitely noticed after, I'll tell you that, it's like having something short that gets to the point right away and is real fast paced and stuff. It's like that. You definitely see the views go up and you see the thumbs up button get hit more or whatever, but it's not, that wasn't the intention going in necessarily. It was more of just like, this is just feels good to do.
Do you have a strategy before you release things? Do you get excited about stuff and just put it right out, or do you sit on it and try to find out, like, think about the best way to unleash it on the world? That's
a great question, because I have not figured that out yet. Some projects, it's like, it's done, it's going out now. It's like, do it. But I don't know, some of the things it's like, yeah, let's try to strategize, and we'll do it like once a week coming up. Let's make sure we have like 5 ready to go. And it's like, and then also for my solo album, I'm on the Brain Feeder label, so it's like I can't just be like Mr. Spontaneous, internet blast, which would be a really long hyphenated name, by the way. But for them, it's like they have to know beforehand like what I'm trying to do, which is good, because then they have like a strategy that they come up with, which ends up being similar to what I would do, but it's like they have more like outlets for PR or help or whatever.
You mentioned being on the Brain Feeder label, which is a Flying Lotus label. I guess that kind of also speaks to this thing about LA, where it's like, from outside, you seem like you're part of this community. You're part of this kind of scene that's been, developing in LA. And it's very possible to be both on a scene and also be kind of isolated in your own way at the same time. Did joining that label and being part of that sort of community, perceived or otherwise, has it had any influence on the way you think about the projects that you're doing? Like, you think, oh, this is Brain Feeder is going to like this, or they want this thing from me, or they want me to approach it in a certain way?
It changed absolutely nothing. And that's no diss to Brain Feeder or any of the artists, because they're incredible, and I respect all of them, and actually I love a lot of their music too, and I love the label. I think they run things well, and they're cool to work with. I love them, but they do not change anything for me. I know what I want to do, and I know, the vibe that I want to have, and I am in control of the art to every degree. The mixing, the what do you call it? The cover art, all that stuff.
The other thing about being an internet artist or whatever, DIY internet artist, is that you become kind of famous in a certain way early, because people know what you look like. I guess if you don't leave your house very often, it doesn't really matter. But like, it makes it kind of harder to fly under the radar. And I met you once in person. You also, there's no way you're going to fly under the radar. You're a very tall guy, but your image is a big part of what's being put out there. Do you think about that? Like, oh, my people who know my videos are going to know me. They're going to see me.
Yeah, well, before I answer that, where did I meet you? Now I feel really bad.
I walked up to you at La Poisson Rouge after you walked off stage a couple of years ago. You had my memories.
Okay, in New York.
In New York.
Was it like the Knower 5-person band? Was that it?
Yeah, I think it was the Knower 5, because Sam was there. I saw Sam.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw you, and then Jose James followed you, and it was, I think, the debut of his Bill Withers tribute project with Nate Smith in the band.
I remember that because I was Nate Smith. I'm just going to, because it's just a funny memory for me, because I think Nate Smith is so awesome. And I was just like sitting in the green room, and Nate Smith walked in, and and he just had like a regular facial expression on, but I was like just smiling my ass off, just looking at him. It probably was weird for him because I was like some dude just smiling at him, and then he started looking at my face, and then he started smiling. I don't know. It was just such like a nice memory for me. Anyway, I thought it was cool. Let me take a picture together.
Oh, that's very sweet.
But yeah, okay, that's cool. I met you there.
I walked up to you in the room. I had emailed you to see if while you were in town we could do an interview. I don't think you had an opportunity to respond. I walked up to you in the room and I was like, hey, we've been talking about an interview. And you said, hey, man, okay, cool. Yeah, I just got to go talk to this person over here. And then you walked away. I do not blame you at all.
God.
I don't blame you at all.
I suck,
I don't blame you.
I got to work on that. I'm sorry, but I'm glad this is happening now.
But what I learned about you in that moment that I really did not fully understand is that you are very tall. You're a very tall person.
Oh, yeah. Man, I used to be able to dunk. When I was in high school, I was really into basketball, and I dunked a few times. It felt really good. But yeah, the original question, yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll leave my house and I'll be in the market, and someone will be like, hey, I really like your music. But it doesn't happen that much. Yeah, it doesn't really happen that much. Sometimes, actually, it's a couple times, like I'll have gone on Twitter and seen that somebody has posted a picture of me like from far away or something. Yeah, like I saw him in the airport or something, and that's kind of fun. That's kind of funny. That's novel to me, so it's fun for me right now. I'm not like I don't get bothered by that. It's cool. And some people are like, I don't want to bother you, man. But it's like, man, you have no idea. This is cool for me. I don't get this all the time.
Well, I guess that's kind of the question, because I don't get a sense of like if you are coveting that or not. Not coveting, but like if you. I don't know. You put so much out there, but then there's just so much. Look, I can't find. I found very few interviews with you. There have been very few with you, and it's like, is that because people aren't asking, or because you're kind of careful about it, or I
think it's a little of both. I feel like I did during this lockdown. I did like kind of a lot, or a lot for me. I did maybe like 5, but yeah, maybe they're not findable, searchable.
No, I found a couple. I definitely found a couple, but there just aren't. There aren't a lot, which only adds to the mystique in a lot of ways, which is why I sort of opened with, who are you?
Yeah. I guess maybe sometimes if I'm just like real in a project, I'll just be like, I can't do an interview right now or something. I just tend to get sucked into whatever I'm working on.
That's the sense I got, is that when you're working, you're just kind of like, I'm not really here. I'm not really anywhere.
Yeah. And it's starting to be something I want to change. I think it's kind of messing with, I know for sure I want to change it. It's kind of like, I think I'm starting to realize how important the people are around me, and I'm messing that up right now, and I want to fix that. And so, not to get too personal, but I used to get, when I would work on stuff, I would just disappear, and I kind of want to adjust that a little bit.
Do you feel like you live in the same world that most people live in, or do you feel like you live in a kind of different world?
Oh man. Yeah. Well, maybe a little of both. I don't know. I think I do maybe view things differently, as any artist would, so I have that. I feel like I have my own observations and own way of commenting on things and seeing things, like probably any person really. But I also feel like I try to stay tapped into some sense of humanity around me and stuff like that. So I guess a little of both.
Do you have a theory or a definition of art that is developed? Do you think about what art is, or the role of art, the function of art?
Man, I don't know if I could give a definition. I just know that, like, especially now, man, I'm just so in touch with, like, when things feel bad, it's like I need music so much. I just need it. I need it in my life. If I'm going through something, I need it so much. I don't know if I have like a definition though of what it is. Part of it is definitely like some kind of observation that also feels good to hear. It feels good to create, and it feels good to hear. So that's a part of it. I don't really know. I should get that together though. I don't really have a definition. What do you have? Do you have one?
No, I have a complicated relationship with the idea of art. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, because I think a lot of people I admire and respect, feel that they are artists and define themselves as artists and recognize that they do see things differently, and that's kind of their job. It's their job to kind of process the world and then present it in a way that other people relate to or understand, or makes them feel less alone, or provokes them, or whatever. But it is the artist's job to sort of like see things from another angle. And then on the other hand, I know a lot of great musicians, technicians, artisans, creative people, and sometimes I think, well, I don't know what where the line is between art and just creativity or creation or just technique, just making stuff.
That's a hard one. I should think about that more. But that's what you said makes sense.
Whenever anybody says they're an artist, I'm sort of like, tell me what does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Just because I want to know. I don't know what it means. I'm trying to like figure that out myself.
It's definitely some kind of expression that people feel they need to make and people feel they need to consume, so.
Yeah, right.
Something's in there.
But it's like, it's so funny, right? Because, there's those early videos of you just basically like playing drum and bass, just to check out, I've been shedding this shit and just check it out,
Yeah.
And that's, to me, the craft aspect. Like if you're going to divide art and craft, like there's one part of it that is just pure craft, and then there's another. I mean, not that it wasn't artful the way you did it, but
no, I know what you're saying. Some of they dip into different aspects of it with different amounts.
Right.
Probably always a little bit of both. Like sometimes you'll just see someone who's just incredible at what they're doing, but their concept is just so not creative or new or deep or whatever, and it's just like, okay, maybe this, I don't know what this is. wouldn't know how to define art necessarily, but I definitely, one thing that came to my mind just now is sometimes when you're just listening to a song that just has the magic in it of whatever art is, it just has that magical feeling in it for you. Like the world around you changes instantly while you're listening to that song. Everything feels different. You receive it differently. You could be looking at something that was mundane a second ago before you started playing the song, and now you're starting to like think of it in like a deep emotional way or something. It's like it just changes the world around you. And I think that I wouldn't know how to explain that, but that's the magic right there.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that's when I said romantic earlier, just to bring this full circle. I guess that's the feeling that I was talking about, is that feeling of looking through the world with a different lens that's being kind of presented for you, or a different filter.
Yeah, fully.
And I get that feeling from you, but I also, half of the time I get that feeling from you, and the other half of the time I get a very disruptive feeling, and as you were describing that, you and Genevieve said about Knower at the beginning, like it's just has to be extreme, whatever it is. And that extreme feeling is often disruptive or even a little uncomfortable, strangely industrial feeling, or, in some ways kind of the opposite of that feeling that we're talking about, of being kind of like cloaked in a different filter of seeing the world. Like that's a very different impulse
right.
that you have also. It's just like, this is not going to be that. This is going to be some other shit that you're going to feel now.
Yeah, and I mean, and everything's received differently for different people. True. So it's like, I think that the intention behind that is still the same, and like probably the feeling that I would get from more of the like insanity music that we do is still kind of the same effect, but it's more of just like a kind of thing, as opposed to like, oh, this is beautiful now, or what, So it's like a similar vibe. To me, obviously it gets received differently by everyone, but to me it would still be like I want to change the feeling of the world around the listener at this point, or really of myself. That's the only person I know for sure I could please is myself. So it's like that, but that is the goal, to give a similar effect.
Part of the reason you asked if I'm a musician. Yes, I'm a musician. I do creative projects also, and like sometimes I feel like I'm not a quote unquote artist because I don't, like, I have a wife and I have a kid and I have a responsible life and I have shit that I promise people I'm going to do, and I do it, and it cuts into my time to do other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been the guy who's just been like, listen,
mm-hmm.
I am not available right now. I'm not here. I'm not going to show up for this. Like, I do show up for stuff, but then I resent it because it takes me away from things I want to do. And sometimes I'm like, maybe if I was more of an artist, I would just be like, I need to do this.
Right.
And then on the other hand, I know that that there are people who would hear that and go like, yeah, I need to do that. I need to show up more. I need to just be present for the people in my life more.
Yeah.
So it just cuts both ways.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's cool to hear your experience with that. I mean, these are thoughts that I'm just raging through my head all the time, about how to be. I just need to find a better balance for myself. I could just be more considerate. I could be less selfish, more considerate, and just more aware of how I'm coming across. And that's something that I really believe I can change, and I believe that I already have started to change.
In the contemporary current artistic world, especially if you're somebody who's making music online, if you're making YouTube videos, whatever, like there's this expectation that you're supposed to know, like have your act together on the business front, also in the way you interact with your fans, like have your whole life has to be totally organized and you're 100% responsible for it because you're DIY, and ultimately a lot of the same impulses that would lead you to make art, whatever that means, to make that stuff, are probably the ones that make you not great. Not you, but just anybody, not great at doing the kind of the other stuff, the spreadsheet part of it, you know what I mean, the organized part of it.
Right.
Like those are,
yeah, I guess that's true.
Those are like in a way conflicting impulses.
I guess I just don't want to make anyone ever feel weird or bad. I just don't want that. So if there's anything I can change about myself, which I'm really seeking out right now, to minimize that, then that's something I want. But yeah, I'm not going to be great at. I'm not going to be perfect type A, or is that what it's called, like type A or whatever? Whatever you call it, left brain. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But you know what I mean, like the super organized kind of thing. I'm organized in certain ways, but not all the ways.
It sounds like you're organized in getting your projects done. Like you see it, you have an idea of what you want to do, and you're like going to be very committed to getting that part done. That's what you're good at doing. Right.
That's where I feel like my organizational skills are strong.
Right. Well, I'll let you get back to the chords and the garage. And Louis Cole, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and I'll remember you now. I'm so sorry. I'm such a spaceman.
Do you wanna ride in my blimp, girl? Do you wanna ride in my blimp?
There he was, my friends, the great Louis Cole. I'll be back again before you know it with another deep dive. Until then, talk to you soon.